Your hips are storing a silent fear that no stretching session can resolve. In fact, stretching this area may be locking your life up even more. The sacrum is the vital bone and, as you know, it sits at the base of your spine. What you don't know is that, when shifted in the right way, it has the power to melt decades of accumulated traumas in just 1 minute. You're about to discover a vibrational safety code that deactivates the internal alarm and gives your body back the permission to move forward. If you close this video now, you'll keep forcing an opening that your nervous system understands as a threat, keeping active the rigidity that prevents your creative force from flowing. Get ready to stop pulling and start truly releasing, accessing the exact point where the defense unravels. The stiffness you feel in your hips is not just physical shortening or a lack of discipline with stretching. It is a vibrational record of silent fear anchored at the base of your spine, specifically in the sacrum. This is not just a support bone, but the vital bone that acts as the center of gravity of your structure and that, when blocked, keeps your system in perpetual alert, preventing the sensation of safety from rising to the rest of the body and keeping you from really landing in life. In Hermetic traditions and somatic alchemy, this triangular region was not seen only as mechanical support, but as the sacred axis or lunar portal of the will, the exact place where archaic memories of falling, humiliation, and loss of territory are imprinted in dense matter like a protective seal. The body, in its ancient wisdom, files the threat directly into the bone to make sure you do not expose yourself again to the risk of falling or being invaded. This is exactly why forcing a stretch in this region almost always fails or makes the feeling of being locked up worse the next day, creating a cycle of frustration and pain. When you aggressively pull tissues that are contracted out of fear and not because of mechanical shortening, you trigger a primitive defense mechanism, the stretch reflex, which orders the muscles to contract even more forcefully to avoid a supposed tear. Polyvagal theory and modern fascia neuroscience reveal that, in an organism that is already in a state of vigilance, the attempt at forced opening is read by the autonomic nervous system as an external aggression, not as relief. The fascial tissue, rich in sensory receptors, changes its viscosity and hardens to create a biological armor around the sacrum, protecting life against a vulnerability it judges to be too dangerous to access. This matters deeply because, as long as your vital bone is operating in this mode of hidden defense, your ability to make firm decisions, to sustain pleasure without guilt, and to take your place in the world will remain frozen, as if you were living with the handbrake pulled at the base of your existence. There is someone who lived exactly this paralysis, trying to break the stiffness with force for years, until discovering the secret of minimal movement. And this person's story will illuminate exactly what you feel now. Susan, at 51, had built a solid career as an ICU nurse, sustaining the lives of strangers while her own seemed to harden from the waist down. She spent 12 hours a day on her feet, in a constant state of alert, but it was when she got home and tried to sit on the couch that the real battle began. Her hips felt filled with concrete, a stiffness that radiated into her lower back and kept her from relaxing, holding her in exhausting vigilance even in the safety of home. The sensation wasn't just physical, it was a silent fear of stopping, a deep inability to land in her own life and rest without guilt, as if something terrible would happen if she let go of control of her pelvis. For years, Susan tried to solve this tension by opening the body by force. She attended yoga and Pilates classes focused on flexibility, forcing pelvic openings and intense stretches that promised relief but invariably left her even more locked up the next day. She didn't know she was fighting her own physiology. Every time she aggressively stretched an area that the nervous system had blocked for protection, her body responded with the stretch reflex, contracting even more to avoid a supposed injury. The cycle of pain and attempts to break the stiffness left her exhausted, convinced that her anatomy was failing. The turning point came on a sleepless night, when she came across an old text about the vital bone and the memory of falling. For the first time, someone wasn't telling her to stretch, but to stop fighting. Sitting on the edge of the bed with her feet on the floor, Susan decided to test displacement instead of traction. She opened her knees, let the weight of her torso drop, and instead of pushing, simply allowed the sacrum to make a microscopic movement backward, guided by gravity. In that exact instant, between the exhale and the minimal movement, she felt a change in temperature at the base of her spine that she had never experienced before. Now, you are going to replicate exactly the ritual that allowed Susan's body to switch off the internal alarm. But I need you to drop any intention of doing a conventional physical exercise. Sit on the edge of a firm chair or a rigid sofa, making sure your ischial bones, the little pointy bones of your butt, are planted like anchors on the surface. Place your feet much wider than hip-width apart, in an opening that challenges your unconscious habit of closing your legs to protect yourself. This position of calculated vulnerability is essential because silent fear lives precisely in the automatic tendency toward adduction. To close the pelvis, to protect the viscera and the vital center from an invisible attack. With your legs open and your feet rooted on the floor, let the weight of your torso fall slightly forward, keeping the spine long, without rounding the back in collapse, but hinging from the hip joint like a firm hinge. Bring all your attention to the base of the spine, to the bony triangle located just above the coccyx. This is your sacrum, the vital bone that Hermetic traditions consider the anchoring point of embodied will, and that neurobiology identifies as the center of gravity of your structure. Instead of forcing a stretch or trying to open the groin, imagine that this bone has suddenly become made of lead, heavy and dense. Allow gravity to pull it back and down by millimeters, creating a subtle space between it and the iliac bones of the pelvis. It is not a movement visible to anyone on the outside. It is an internal sensation of gentle disengagement, as if you were creating air inside a joint that spent decades compressed by the fear of falling. At this exact point, introduce the micro-articulation. Start to rock your torso forward and backward, but in such a tiny movement that it feels like just a vibration or an intentional tremor. You are looking for the precise angle at which the vital bone seems to float freely instead of being stuck in the flesh. You are not stretching muscles. You are lubricating the deep fascia with movement and presence. You will likely feel an initial resistance, a desire in the body to lock up and return to its habitual stiffness. Honor that. Do not push against the barrier. Just keep the dead weight of the torso falling over the pelvis and continue the micro-oscillation, informing the sensory receptors in this region that there is no danger in letting go. Feel the warmth begin to emerge, not from the skin, but from inside the bone, a sign that blood flow is returning to a territory that lived in emotional ischemia. Before we add the breathing that seals this change, it is essential that you understand what happened with Susan in the instant she stopped fighting against her own base. When Susan allowed that micro-displacement, guided by gravity, sitting on the edge of the bed after yet another exhausting shift. The sensation was not of a mechanical crack, but of an internal dam silently breaking. A liquid, almost electric warmth rose from the base of her spine and flooded the lumbar region, dissolving a plate of cold tension that she had carried since the beginning of her nursing career. For the first time in years, she noticed that her glutes and pelvic floor were not contracted in defense while she was sitting. The internal alarm that kept her sympathetic nervous system screaming danger, even in the silence of her bedroom, simply switched off. The transformation in the days that followed was measurable and undeniable. The chronic exhaustion that drained her legs in the middle of a hospital shift disappeared, replaced by a strange and welcome stability. But the real impact was in her stance toward life. Susan was able to have a difficult conversation with her supervisor without retreating or stuttering, feeling planted on the ground, supported by her own bones and not by muscular tension. The fear of taking up space, which she believed to be an immutable trait of her personality, began to dissolve because the biological base of that fear, the pelvis locked in protection, had changed its configuration. What Susan accessed that night is exactly what your body is beginning to register now. Return to the sensation of the vital bone, heavy and shifted by gravity, keeping that challenging opening in your legs. Now we are going to integrate the component that rewrites the memory of danger in the nervous system. Slowed breathing with a focus on the exhale. Inhale through your nose, counting to 4, imagining the air descending and filling this empty space you have just created in the center of the pelvis. Pause for a second. Now let the air out through your mouth very slowly, as if you were blowing on a candle without wanting to put it out, counting to 6 or 8, and as you release the air, let the sacrum slide even further toward the floor, giving the full weight of your structure to the chair. With each long exhale, visualize the silent fear, that vibration of alert and contraction trickling down your thighs, passing through your knees, and leaving through the soles of your feet, being drained into the earth. Repeat this breathing cycle for at least 1 minute, keeping the micro-articulation if you feel it is necessary. If you feel the urge to yawn, sigh deeply, or if your eyes fill with tears, allow it immediately. These are classic signs of discharge of the autonomic nervous system, indicating that you are transitioning from a defensive state to a state of social safety and rest. Feel that, by shifting the vital bone and exhaling for a long time, you are not just relaxing a muscle, you are sending a vibrational safety code to your primitive brain, informing it that the war is over and that it is safe to land. Select and record in your memory this sensation of warm, stable, expansive weight at the base of your spine. The physical marker that this transformation has taken place is unmistakable. When you get up, you will feel your feet flatter on the ground, and a subtle yet persistent warmth in the sacral and low back region. Your pelvis, once a rigid dam, now feels like a fluid support that follows the movement of your legs without jerks. To anchor this new state of safety, we will use a discrete signal. Whenever you feel the stiffness returning, place your open hand over the sacrum at the base of the back. Apply gentle pressure downward and exhale for a long time, letting the weight drop into your heels. Repeat this gesture for 30 seconds. This serves as a tactile reminder to the nervous system the support exists and it is safe to let go. The return protocol for hard days is clear. When you feel the urge to run away or notice that you are holding your breath and clenching your glutes, stop. Sit down, even if only for a minute. Spread your legs. Shift the vital bone with gravity and repeat internally. My base is safe. I can land here. This command, together with the bone displacement, interrupts the cycle of fear before it settles in again. Now that the seal is made, we need to expand this awareness. What you experience today fundamentally alters the internal geography of who you are. By freeing the hips from this silent fear, you don't just gain immediate physical comfort or a more elegant posture. You reclaim the biological authority to remain in your own choices without the constant urge to abandon ship at the slightest sign of pressure. You now realize that your chronic indecision, that hesitation to take up your space or the difficulty in sustaining pleasure, often were not character flaws or mental confusion, but the incessant vibration of a body that could not find solid ground to lean on and therefore lived in defensive suspension. By shifting the vital bone, you interrupted the transmission of that danger signal. But understand that this displacement of the sacrum is only the first key in a much broader system of reconnection and somatic sovereignty. The body is an extensive territory of archived memories and dammed up potentials that await being unlocked, layer by layer, bone by bone. What we did here was to cleanse the entrance of the temple and unlock the main gate. There is much more to be restored at the inner altar, from the freedom of the diaphragm to the release of the voice. The rigid body is not a manufacturing error. It is an ancient prayer of protection that forgot to say amen and end the ritual. Today, you taught your system to finish that prayer and open itself to the grace of real presence. As perennial wisdom reminds us, the soul does not inhabit a body that expels it with tension. It lands where there is space and silence. God designed your bony structure to bear the glory of life and the force of creation, not to act as a warehouse of inherited fear or a file cabinet of pains that no longer exist in the present. If this ritual brought you relief, clarity, and a new sense of gravity, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not passive. It strengthens our healing ego. Consider becoming a member of the channel to support the production of content that unites science and soul with this depth and precision. I want to know how your hips and your base responded to this command of release and displacement. Write this sentence in the comments. I shift the vital bone and melt the silent fear. By writing this affirmation, you materialize the intention in the physical world and seal a neurological commitment to your new stance toward life. Do not let this sensation of warmth cool down or dissipate in automatic routine. Click on the video that is appearing on the screen now to continue your journey of somatic unlocking and discover other areas where your power may be dammed up. Remember, Fear is an opportunistic tenant that only occupies the rooms you leave empty. Inhabit your bones, occupy your base with presence, and fear will have nowhere left to live.